A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. My name is Cam Edwards. It is great to have you with us today. No matter your age, young or old, I saw a picture on Twitter over the weekend of a little toddler watching the program. I'm so glad to know that, I try to keep this family friendly for a reason. You never know when the impressionable youth of America might get, a lesson in cursing from Uncle Cam. I am glad that you are with us today. We've got a lot to talk about. It was a chaotic weekend in many parts of the country, particularly in Missouri, where it seems like there is an inordinate amount of incidents that took place over the weekend. Let's start with what happened in St. Louis, Missouri, where about 500 folks entered into a gated community to protest outside of St. Louis Mayor Lyda Krewson's home. As they were marching there, this couple, the McCloskeys, a pair of personal injury attorneys in St. Louis, came outside of their home, told the protesters that they were on private property, that they needed to leave, pointed their firearms at the protesters. Thankfully, nobody was injured. The protesters moved on. There is a great amount of discussion and debate right now as to whether or not the McCloskeys broke any laws. I think they certainly did not display good firearms handling. You can see, let's see if I get the picture here. I'm not sure if you can see it in this particular photo, but you've got a finger on the trigger. You've got, again, firearms pointed at individuals. Again, I'm not sure that this rises to a level of a crime in Missouri, but again, not the best example of gun handling. However, were they within their rights to protect their homes? I think clearly the answer is yes. What's fascinating is that this is not the only incident of armed citizens in Missouri over the weekend, as a matter of fact. You had in the town of, hang on a second. What is this town? Amidst, Missouri. The sheriff there in Amidst, Missouri, Shannon County, Missouri, said that he had received credible threats to his life, the life of deputies, the courthouse, the jail, and about 100 armed citizens from across the state ended up showing up there in Amidst, Missouri over the weekend. Thankfully, again, there was no unrest, there was no violence, but the sheriff said he felt like he had to make the call, given the small size of the sheriff's office there. Is basically the sheriff and then 3 deputies. This all started over, a Facebook post about a week ago. Mother of a man who died in 2018 posted on Facebook that she wanted to see this death investigation reopened. She doesn't believe that it was an accidental drowning, and things just sort of took off from there. And so, again, there were rumors of a big crowd and unrest, and that's when the armed citizens showed up. The reason, by the way, in St. Louis, why people were protesting outside of Mayor Lyda Krewson's home is that last week, Lyda Krewson, during a Facebook live stream, had said the names and addresses of several individuals who had written into the city urging that the police department either be defunded or abolished. What's fascinating about that is public information. But people are angry that the mayor actually, blurted out this information as opposed to somebody filing a Freedom of Information Act request and figuring out this information on their own. So they were marching to Mayor Krewson's home to demand her resignation. She says that she is not going to step down. You also had in Lebanon, Tennessee, several veterans show up at the Wilson County Veterans Memorial saying that they were there to protect that property amid rumors of destruction. Thankfully, again, didn't look like any destruction actually took place. Very glad to see that. The veterans, by the way, said that they were there. They were, just there to protect the property. They weren't there to try to shut down anybody's First Amendment rights or right to peacefully protest. Nothing, again, untoward happened there in Lebanon, Tennessee, and I'm glad to see that. But again, It seems like as the unrest continues, more and more Americans are saying, all right, you know what? I'm going to protect my property. I'm going to protect the places that I love. I'm going to go and protect my local sheriff, if need be, from the chaos that we're seeing in our communities. And by the way, we are seeing some genuine chaos in our communities. I have a story at Bearing Arms today talking about this absolutely tragic incident in Milwaukee that has received virtually no national media attention, despite the fact that there were several people shot, there were 10 officers injured, a family's left homeless after their home was burned down by a mob that thought they were targeting a sex trafficking den. Yeah, last week, 2 teenage girls in Milwaukee, a 13 and a 15-year-old, went missing. Police investigated. They went to this home. They asked around, have you seen anybody? No, the girls, as it turns out, the girls were fine. They were just staying at another home. But meanwhile, as police are there at this particular home, crowd shows up, gets very, very angry, begins assaulting police officers. At least one family living inside the home, mom was not there because she was in the hospital giving birth. The crowd attempted to set fire to the building. The fire department able to put out the blaze, but then later that night, crowds returned, and the home was set on fire. In the midst of all of this chaos, 3 people were shot in Milwaukee during that riot, basically, that took place outside of the home. The Milwaukee Police Department says while officers were on scene, the crowd continued to grow. Individuals began to throw bricks and pieces of concrete at officers, which resulted in 2 officers being injured. Due to the large crowd and their unruly behavior, the officers who were at the location requested backup. Prior to additional officers arriving at the scene, the crowd surrounded the rear of the residence and set a couch, a vehicle, and a residence on fire. Milwaukee police had to escort members of the Milwaukee Fire Department to the scene in order for them to be able to safely extinguish the fire. As a result of responding to this incident, 1 member of the Milwaukee Fire Department sustained a non-life-threatening injury and was transported to a local hospital. During this incident, several shots were fired by individuals in the crowd, and 3 individuals sustained non-life-threatening gunshot injuries. The victims of those non-fatal shootings were taken to a local hospital for treatment, where they are expected to survive. A total of 10 officers sustained injuries. Later in the evening, the crowd returned, reignited the fire to the residence. Officers intervened. However, 3 officers were injured by individuals who were in the crowd who struck them with bricks. Yeah. And again, all of this because the mob believed that this was some sort of sex trafficking location. Now, the woman who was at the hospital giving birth and was not in her home, says that she had not seen any evidence at all that this had been a den of sex traffickers. She's got a 2-year-old. She's got a newborn. She said, I don't know where they're getting this information from. But as the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported, rumors took hold on social media as people live streamed from the scene to thousands of viewers sharing unconfirmed information like a game of telephone. The details morphed over time. How many children were missing? Could they be in houses nearby? And what, if any, evidence was found in the home at the center of the conflict to support allegations of sex trafficking? After this resident shared her story, people on social media began calling her a fraud, speculating that she didn't actually live in the house. And again, she says there weren't enough police around. Police say, well, look, we got 10 people injured, 10 officers injured. We were there. It's just that the mob overwhelmed us. So far, by the way, I've not seen any reporting, again, not only by the national media, but I've not seen any media question Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett about what happened last week in Milwaukee. But again, it's more evidence that the fraying of the social fabric continues across the United States. And as more and more Americans, again, pick up firearms for the very first time, National Shooting Sports Foundation estimates that as many as 2 million Americans became new gun owners just since January of this year. Incidents like this, again, are going to cause and prompt more Americans to exercise their right to keep and bear arms. I would caution, if you do this, I'm not going to caution you about exercising your right to keep and bear arms, but if you do so, if you become a gun owner, please understand and please learn the laws of your state. Please go and get some training. Take a basic pistol course at the very least. But if you plan on getting your concealed carry license, go get your training, go get an education. The last thing that we want is for the exercise of our right to keep and bear arms, again, to end up in a tragic circumstance or to see a lawfully armed citizen end up violating the law and facing criminal charges as a result. So we will continue to pay attention to the chaos that, again, is enveloping so many communities around the country. But I have to say, I think that this is, honestly, if nothing else, a stark reminder to Americans that, sadly, despite the presence of police officers in our community, they are not under any obligation to protect you as an individual. The Supreme Court has said as much in a case called Castle Rock versus Gonzalez, that even if you take out an order of protection against somebody and that individual violates that order of protection and they do you harm, you can't turn around and blame the police for not protecting you as an individual. So the police are not there to protect your individual home or your individual life. They're there to protect and serve the community. And right now, with law enforcement so overwhelmed, I'm not sure that they're able to do that. And as a result, the need for Americans to be able to protect themselves, the people that they love, and the homes that they live in, the businesses that they operate, becomes ever more acute. Now, let's get to today's armed citizen story. Speaking of that, our deal of the day, our recidivist report, and our good deed of the day. We will start with our recidivist report. Again, this is from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I didn't mean for this to be the case where we talk about this mob burning down a home, and then the plea deal of the day ended up being from Milwaukee as well. But again, it's another piece of evidence that there's just general lawlessness, even in courts of law. You're seeing lawless behavior exonerated. So here's the headline: Milwaukee man sentenced to 3 years of probation in road rage incident that injured a 5-year-old child. Now, I confess, when I saw this headline, I thought to myself, okay, well, maybe there's some sort of extenuating circumstances here. Fox 6 in Milwaukee says 36-year-old Anthony Jenkins sentenced to 3 years of probation on June 16th after being found guilty on 2 counts related to a road rage incident in which a 5-year-old was shot. The judge imposed a sentence of 3 years behind bars and 2 years of extended probation. However, the judge stayed that sentence and instead placed Jenkins on 3 years probation, during which he was ordered to perform 150 hours of community service, among other conditions. Jenkins was charged with 1 felony count of second-degree recklessly endangering safety, as well as 1 misdemeanor count of endangering safety by use of a dangerous weapon. He pleaded no contest to those charges back on March the 2nd. He had also faced a charge of 1 count of first-degree recklessly endangering safety, use of a dangerous weapon. That charge was dismissed. Now, this case happened back in July of 2019. Basically, there was a father who was driving down the road, had his 5-year-old in the back seat, and a van pulls up behind the car that the dad was driving in. Investigators spoke with the victim in this case. He said he was coming home from Burger King. His daughter was in the back seat when he noticed this green van tailgating him. So he said he stopped his car. The van then drove around him and then stopped near his driver's side door. He said the driver, later identified as Jenkins, began yelling at him about driving too slow. Then Jenkins got out of his van, walked to the front of the vehicle. The father then noticed a handgun in his waistband. Father then tries to take off and drive away. Jenkins then pulls out his gun and begins shooting. The 5-year-old girl was struck in the left leg. The vehicle was also hit, according to the complaint. And yet, Mr. Jenkins, after shooting a 5-year-old girl, gets 3 years probation for this crime. Again, when we talk about, the need for criminal justice reform, I'm all in favor. But let's talk about cases like this, too, where Jenkins, after shooting a 5-year-old, is offered a plea deal by prosecutors, and he gets off with a slap on the wrist and 3 years of probation. That seems like the punishment doesn't fit the crime, does it not? Even if Mr. Jenkins doesn't have a previous criminal history, even if he's been an upstanding member of society up to this point, he shot a 5-year-old girl. And he's not going to do any time behind bars other than, the amount of time he might have spent awaiting trial. It's absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd. All right, on to our armed citizen story from Glendale, Arizona. Don't have a lot of information about this case. Saturday afternoon, Fox 10 reports it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Officers responded to a home for reports of a home intruder When they arrived, the homeowner told dispatchers, actually as they were on their way, homeowner told dispatchers that he was armed. Police say that he shot the suspect. Condition of that suspect, at last report, not known. But again, given that this was an intruder, this would appear to be a case of self-defense. We will try to keep our eyes on any new developments there in this story out of Glendale, Arizona. Finally today, our good deed of the day. In the Garden State of New Jersey, Secaucus, New Jersey, where two police officers helped save the life of a 4-year-old from a burning building by catching the child after mom dropped the kid out of the window of this burning building. Police One reports that the press release from the Secaucus Police Department said officers were responding to a fire call Wednesday evening where one officer found a 56-year-old woman unconscious in an apartment that was actively on fire. That officer, identified as Nicholas Spannenberg, along with police officer Jason Mitchell and Detective Aniello Schaefer, carried the woman to safety. Victim was taken to the hospital with second and third degree burns. At the same time that's taking place, Detective Matthew Ford and police officer Stephen Hurtick and Matthew Garzone arrived on scene. That's when the mother, who is a resident of the second floor of this building, told officers that she was not able to evacuate her smoke-filled apartment. And she ended up dropping her 4-year-old son out of the window where he was caught by Detective Matthew Ford. The Secaucus Fire Department safely evacuated the child's mom, several other residents from the building. The cause of the fire remains under investigation. Police don't believe that it was suspicious at this point, but again, they're not sure what started the blaze. But life-saving efforts on the part of multiple officers there in Secaucus, New Jersey. So police officer Nicholas Spannenberg, officer Jason Mitchell, Detective Aniello Schaefer, Detective Matthew Ford, and officers Stephen Hurtick and Matthew Garzone, all in the right place at the right time and willing and able to do the right thing. And we thank them all for their very, very good deeds. Now, one more note before we get out of here today. One of the stories that we'll be following and covering on Bearing Arms this afternoon, word out of the Colorado State Supreme Court upholding that state's ban on ammunition magazines that can accept more than 15 rounds of ammunition. This was a suit that was brought by Rocky Mountain gun owners. The Supreme Court declaring today that this ban on commonly owned fire magazines does not violate the state constitution there in Colorado. So we'll have more details on that case. And also coming up Wednesday, we've got a lot of new laws going into effect in the state of Virginia. All of Ralph Northam's anti-gun agenda is going to be on the books. A judge in Goochland County, Virginia, on Friday turned back a challenge to this new one gun a month law that's going to be going into effect in the state of Virginia, saying that that did not violate the state's constitution. There is a separate legal challenge underway in Lynchburg, Virginia, to the state's new quote-unquote universal background check law. It is unlikely, however, that a hearing and a decision is going to be held before the law takes effect. Virginia Citizens Defense League, Gun Owners of America, seeking an injunction that would prevent that law from going into place. But again, it looks like the hearing is going to take place after July the 1st. So even if a judge grants the injunction, it's likely that universal background check law may be on the books for at least a short amount of time. And it could be on the books even longer. So one of the things that we're going to be doing later this week is talking with law enforcement in Virginia about these new laws, how they plan on enforcing them if they do. And I do want to get into a deeper discussion about the calls to reform policing, the calls to defund police, coming from gun control advocates who depend and rely on police to enforce their gun control laws. Gun control laws create gun crimes, right? I mean, you would not have the crime in Colorado, for instance, of possessing a 20-round magazine if it were not for a gun control law. That's a nonviolent possessory offense. And in Colorado, it's not really prosecuted all that often. Although when it is, generally speaking, it's taking place in Denver, other big cities, and you're seeing a disproportionate impact among young minority males. So why is it then that the left is so enamored with gun control laws that have such dire consequences for nonviolent individuals who are engaging in activity that may be perfectly legal the next state over? Again, we're going to be getting into that discussion as Virginia's gun control laws go into effect later this week. But I do want to thank you for being a part of the program today. We will be back tomorrow. Also, just one more program note. Since the Independence Day holiday is going to fall on a Saturday this year, we will be recognizing that on Friday, July the 3rd. We will not have a Bearing Arms Cam Company this Friday, but we've got 4 days of shows for you all week long, so make sure that you are connected and subscribed at Town Hall Media on YouTube, or you can subscribe to Bearing Arms Cam Company on the Apple Podcasts. You can also become a VIP Gold member of Bearing Arms at bearingarms.com. That way you get exclusive analysis, commentary, live chats with folks like Ed Morrissey from Hot Air and myself, and a lot of other very cool stuff, and we certainly do appreciate your support. Until we talk again, be safe, be well, be free, and we'll see you soon with another edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company.